Welcome to our session, Building Unified Data Platform to Support Metacognition and Self-Regulated Learning. Let me just present here. So you'll see in the background there, that's a picture of downtown Ann Arbor, just to give you a sense of where I'm coming to you from. If you're ever in the area, please feel free to look me up. I love talking with fellow practitioners in this field. My name is John Johnston. I'm a program manager for Learning Analytics and Data Services at the University of Michigan. I've worked there for just over 20 years now. And I'm also somewhat of our university's service liaison with a consortium called Unison. Representing Unison, we've got Etienne Pelleprat, who's the Chief Technology Officer there, who you're going to hear from just shortly. If nothing else, hopefully you'll get two things out of this session. First, you'll get some exposure to an approach for building a learning records platform. In this case, one that is built on open learning standards and using a common approach to modeling data. And secondly, you'll get a demonstration of an approach for delivering multiple source learning analytics. In this case, sort of informed by the areas of self-regulated learning theory, metacognition, and student motivation. So talk a little bit about this approach to building a learning records platform. I'm going to go ahead and give the floor over to Etienne Pelleprat.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon or good evening. And that picture is where I'm coming from. Well, so is that one too, which is Oak Park, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. And that's the, I'm sure you recognize it, world famous Lake Theater that seats about 300 people. So next slide. Okay, so there's a premise to a lot of the work that John and I have been working, doing together for a number of years, which is that a premise that we think is increasingly, more and more true every day, which is that if you want to build impactful learning analytics, you, in practice, need to use data from a growing number of tools. And those tools may describe learners, they may describe learning environments, they may describe learning processes, and you need to bring those types of data from a growing number of tools together if you want to build valuable learning analytics. So what I briefly wanted to cover here was some key concepts and ideas that we've implemented to develop what we call a unified data platform that brings together a data foundation that we think is going to be increasingly required for anybody that wants to develop learning analytics to drive the student experience, the advisor experience, and a number of other persona experiences. And the first one, which may seem obvious, is that you've got to bring data in from any system that facilitates the learning experience. And that doesn't just include the learning management system. That includes any tools that are integrated with that learning management system. We'll just call those LTI tools. And you've also got to bring in data from the student information system, largely because that data, the student information system will contain lots of important, depending on the type of analytics you're developing, lots of important data about learners, demographic data, so socioeconomic status data, and also courses, course descriptions, but also things like admission scores, degrees, when they earned those degrees. So all of this depends on what you're actually trying to study, what data you might need. But for any given study, you might need to pull data from these three systems for there to be any feasibility to the study. So the first idea is that a unified data platform needs to bring together data from a growing number of tools, and that data is heterogeneous and isn't always easy to work with. Next slide. Okay, the second key idea that we've been thinking about for a long time is that there are really two kinds of data that we see in practice, and it's worth distinguishing them. There are standards that distinguish them, but conceptually they are quite different. And the first type of data that we see more and more of every month is event data. And these are statements that describe a discrete behavior, usually of a learner in a learning environment. They are pithy. They are not incredibly rich from a descriptive point of view. They just assert a fact. And that fact, in theory, corresponds to the learning behaviors of an individual. So you could get event data, a series of 3-4 events here. Susie started a quiz in Bio 101 Section 3 at 4:15 p.m. She started question 1, she completed question 1, she completed quiz 5, and these are 4 discrete events. And these are the type of things that you might get millions of from any particular institution in one day, from the learning management system, LTI tools, and any other systems that might emit this behavioral data. The second type of data is what we call contextual data, and it's objects and their relationships. So it's data that tends to be much more descriptive about the things in the learning environment and the relationships between the things in the learning environment. And these are usually generated out of the operational data stores of applications or tools. And you can dump them out typically in some kind of flat file format like a CSV, and then you can perform some kind of transformations. But for quiz 5, for example, whereas an event that says Susie started quiz 5, you would be unlikely to get the title of the quiz in that event, or the description of the quiz, or the number of points possible in that quiz. All you know about quiz 5 in the event data is that Susie started it in Bio 101, Section 3 at a particular time. If you wanted to understand more about that quiz, or about the module it's in, or the course that it's in, you need to go to the context data. And so the reason, one of the main reasons we call it context data, is that it's the data you need to interpret the behaviors of an individual. And for any given tool or system, it's, in our experience, very reasonable to assume you should get both. You should get both behavioral data and context data. So the data platform that we've built is able to capture both those types of tools for both those types of data for any given tool, and then do something with them. That next thing that we have found you want to do with the data from these different systems is commonly model them, right? Transform them into a single ontology. So what Canvas may call a course, PeopleSoft may call a course offering, and Pearson MyLabs may call a course context. But from the researcher's perspective, or from the person trying to interpret the data's perspective, those are all three just one thing. They just happen to have different names. And this problem, this kind of heterogeneity in the naming of data from a diverse set of systems, where the concepts between them, even though the names are different, are identical, is really important to solve at the level of just data ingestion and data preparation. And so what our unified data platform does is it just does just what I just said, which is it transforms data from any source ontology into a common ontology. And there are a couple of standards that we use. For behavioral data, we rely on IMS Global's Caliper standard because it has a fixed ontology for the behavioral data emitted from any particular tool. A couple of years ago, when we started down this path, we did not find a corresponding standard for a common ontology for the context data. And so we developed one called the Unison Common Data Model. It's derived from some prior art, and there are some very close kin elsewhere in education, in K-12 to it. But both of these together provide one single target ontology into which we transform all of the data. And obviously that mapping from some particular tool or system to that target ontology takes a lot of work. But again, we found that really necessary to do the kinds of things that John will illustrate later. And last slide, or at least for me. Okay, the last thing that we implemented as a feature of this platform is what we call coalescing or merging data into a singular representation. And this is performed the sort of coalescing of data is performed for both event and behavioral and context data. And again, the root of the problem is that you are trying to take data from, let's say, 10 different tools. And those 10 tools are all used in a single course by a single learner. But when you get the data from every one of those tools, what you're likely to get is data from about the learner or about that course or about the assignment from that tool's point of view, not from the course's point of view or the learner's point of view or the researcher's point of view. Because what a researcher may see is there was a course and there were these students taking that course, and here were the learning experiences that were designed and delivered in that course for these learners. What these tools see is, here's my data about that course, and every tool is going to have some data about the learners and the courses, and it's going to be overlapping. So when you actually get this data from these different systems, you're going to have it for 10 different tools, 10 different records for each student and each enrollment. And what you want to do then is merge those data together into a singular set of data. And when you're doing that, you want to ensure that you're taking sort of the superset of the attributes of that data. And what you end up delivering in a research context then is what we call a singular representation of that data, where you're just really dealing with one consolidated or coalesced record about Susie or a course or an assignment, where what's been coalesced is the data about that phenomena, that learner, that learning environment, that learning design, that was facilitated over many, many tools. And in case you're wondering, I put up these identifiers here because the way we do it, we've been able to do it is through the IDs of these records and maintaining mappings between IDs from different systems. It is possible to do that. There was some, questions a few years ago about whether and how you could do that. And I think we've demonstrated that you can rely, if you have the right mix of technical approach and some good partners, you can do that by the identifiers for things in the data you receive. So I think that's it for me. I think I may have one more. Right, so I'll just wrap this one up. So why do we think a unified data platform is important? Because again, our experience is showing more and more that in practice, our learning analytics need to be based on 360-degree views of learners in their learning environment. And that means bringing together data from different tools, where those tools are all part and parcel of the student's learning experience, bringing together different types of data, particularly event or behavioral and context data, and merging all that together in an intelligent way so that when you present or use in a analysis, or if you built your analytics and you want to deploy them in a sort of an operational context, you're relying on that consolidated data representation, singular consolidated data representation.
All right, thank you, Etienne. That image that you see down at the bottom right there, that is the law library at the University of Michigan. We are now running that unified data platform that Etienne just remembered at the University of Michigan. So we're bringing in performance, demographic, and behavioral information from various sources. Not only are we doing that, but a dozen or so of our peer institutions within the USEN consortium are also running that same unified data platform, using that common modeling. So we can start to build common tools on it. We can start to do multi-institutional research on the learning sciences, and we can start to partner on all kinds of endeavors, one of which we're going to take a look at now. So what is MILA? MILA is what we lovingly refer to as a tool that we developed called My Learning Analytics. It is a set of learning analytics visualizations that are student-facing, that were designed to promote metacognitive skills such as monitoring and reflection, planning, and goal setting. This was a collaboration that was done with the University of Michigan School of Information and School of Education, along with our group, ITS Teaching and Learning. We're going to be talking about sort of the implementation side. So this is in the practitioner's track. I will be pointing out later sort of a companion paper that was done by Stephanie Teasley and team that looks at more of the research aspects of this effort. So we did a pre and post survey to students, and we also did some log analysis of usage of this. A lot of those details are in the paper, and the recording of the presentation that was given yesterday is also available, and I'll share that information with you. We often refer to My Learning Analytics as the undashboard. So this effort was informed by our past experience in attempts to build student-facing learning analytics, sort of coupled with our exposure to the research, both of which have surfaced many challenges in the efficacy of putting these types of analytics in front of students. Key amongst those is that often learning analytics dashboards are added to tools like a learning management system sort of as an appendage. It's yet another place they have to go to, another tool that they have to learn outside of the normal workflows. So what we attempt to do is to put these insights as close as possible to where they're meaningful to students. That means putting them actually in their normal learning workflows. I think the best way to demonstrate this is something that is sometimes unusual for LAC, and that's actually to do a live demonstration. What could go wrong? Don't worry, I do have a bailout button in case things go sideways here. But let's go ahead and we're going to launch a Canvas course. So this is our learning management system that we use. And in this particular case, we're in the files area. So a student may come here to look for an article to read or look at the syllabus. What we do in this tool and several other tools within the LMS is we provide a link to some insights. So if I click on this, it'll bring up a tool that looks something like this. What we're looking at is a representation of this course. This is a 16-week course. Currently, we're in week 11. What we're looking at is the most popular files, the most viewed files within this particular course. And so if we look down here, we see a list of different files. So there are videos in here. These are coming not only from Canvas, but also tools that we've integrated using that caliper specification that you just heard Etienne talk about. So we're pulling data from multiple sources and aggregating them. So what I see here is this particular file, the week 8 video, 86% of the peers in my course have looked at this file. And I can see that it's blue, so I have looked at this. That's an indicator that I've looked at this file. So the blue ones are resources that I viewed. And as a student, I may say, well, you know, I don't really remember looking at this file. What I can do is I can mouse over it and see, oh, you accessed this last on March 16th. Oh, fantastic. If I wanted to, I could go ahead and click on this and I can review the file. But more importantly, in this case, we've got files down here that are in gray. This indicates that I've not yet looked at them. So I can go ahead and review this particular file if I want. Furthermore, I might want to go ahead and filter these by students in different performance groups. So let's say, for instance, I'm a struggling student. I want to see what students are looking at that are sort of in my performance category, 70, 79%. And it will show me those files. And we can see here there's a few, this one in fact, that 100% of my peers have looked at that I have not yet reviewed. So I might definitely want to take a look at that one. Furthermore, if I wanted to look at what the high performance students are doing, let's say the smart kids, I can go ahead and say, what are the students who are scoring 90 to 100% doing? And so I can go ahead and view those files. By default, I'm seeing this week and last week. If I want to, I can sort of go back in time and see all the files that were viewed throughout the entire term, and it will update the view. By default, we're showing 7 or 8 of these in here. If I want to go ahead and look at the less viewed ones, I can go ahead and expand my view, or I can go ahead and scroll down if I want to. So really the value in this visualization is making the student aware of content that they may have otherwise missed. All right, another visualization that we have available is called the assignment planning view. And so what this shows students is up on the top is a timeline that represents all of the learning activities that the student is responsible for in this particular course. And the width of these bars represents the relative impact that'll have on my grade. And so for instance, this final video project, I can see here that it's worth 16.3% of my final grade. It's gray. That means that I've not yet been graded on this yet. The blue ones are ones that I have indeed looked at and have been graded. So if I mouse over those, it'll tell me some useful information. I got a 4.8 out of 5 on this. The class average was a 4.7, so I can see how I'm doing in relation to my peers. And also I get an indication of what its relative impact is, just under 6% of my final grade. Then it shows where we are currently in the term, and also as I get points or lose points, it'll show me what my max possible score is. And so we get this indicator over here of if I do everything at 100% after this point, what is the maximum score I can get? And I can see roughly around 97%. Then the other part of the visualization down here shows us the week by week view. It automatically defaults to the current week. So here we are in week 12. It's highlighted. I see I've got 2 activities here. I see what the relative impact of those scores are at. If I want to, I can go ahead and scroll forward and look at activity. If I only want to look at sort of higher impact items, learning activities, I can go and I can actually filter those. Let's say I only want to see learning activities that are going to be worth over 10% of my grade. I can go ahead and filter that view. And maybe this is the view that I want to see every time I come in here. And so if I want to, I can go ahead and have it remember my settings. So next time I come back, it will keep just those sort of high impact assignments up there in view. Really the main value that the student gets out of this is it provides them some tools to efficiently budget their time to focus on those high impact activities. And so this is the assignment planning view. We also have a grade distribution view. Again, all these tools are available. I'm showing you through the menu here, but they're available directly from the learning workflows. So when the student is looking at their grade book, there's an icon where they can launch this visualization straight in the grade book. So what we see is a grade distribution view here. And so we can see where my grade is at, this orange bar, so I can see how I'm doing in relation to my fellow students. In order to protect the privacy of students, their grades, particularly in smaller classes, we've got some logic that bins the outliers. And so we can see here that there are 6 students who have scored under an 83%, but we don't see their individual score. So imagine you have a fairly small class, and you go to this class a couple times a week, and you notice that Johnny is struggling, and then you come in here and you see this one outlier that's maybe at 25%. That gives you a way to pretty easily intuit what Johnny's grade is. So we've got this logic in here that bins the outliers. You can also see some information here about the average grade, the medium grade, the class size, and what my grade is. In some cases, the student actually seeing their grade may be demotivating to them, so we do give them the option here to go ahead and hide their particular grade if they want, and then we'll remember this setting. So we don't want to cause more stress for the students, so if they want to go ahead and hide their grade, we can do that. So that is the grade distribution view. I'm going to go ahead and pop back to slides here, and let's see, the demo worked. Boom. All right, so nothing went wrong. I mentioned that there is sort of a companion paper on this project that covers some of the research aspects. It's called How Patterns of Student Dashboard Use Are Related to Their Achievement and Self-Regulatory Engagement. You can see the folks that were involved in that. Here's the information on the full research paper. It was number 50. It was actually presented yesterday. So if you go to the LAC video gallery, you'll see that. Just look for paper number 50. Having said that, we did some analysis of the usage of this tool, and we looked at a measure of the total number of points that are available in all assignments. And so you saw that assignment planning view there. So we're capturing all the possible points in the assignment. And we looked at, hey, so students that chose to use MILA or not, was there any correlation between their performance? And so here are the courses from last term that we piloted My Learning Analytics in. And we see that on average, the students who did not use MILA in this particular course, they got just over 89% of the available points. Those that used MILA, they averaged just over 96%. In this case here, climate studies, the students who did not use MILA, they tended to get 63% of the assignment points, and those that used MILA. And this was a consistent sort of pattern. And so if we visualize this a little bit, what we're looking at here over on this axis is the percentage of points available in all assignments. And so if they, this is 100% up here, this would be 0%. These are each of the courses that we piloted. The yellow ones are students, all the students who did not use MILA, and the blue are the ones that used MILA. The size of each of these are representing the number of students, the relative number of students in it. And so you can see in each case there was a gap in the points received, whether they used MILA or not. So that was an interesting finding that is explored more deeply in that paper that I had mentioned. So what are our next steps? MILA has been used in 27 courses so far at the University of Michigan, just over 2,300 students. We have, though, spun up My Learning Analytics instances at 8 other campuses in that consortium, plus the University of British Columbia. And so we plan to start capturing both usage data and student survey data from them and analyzing that. We have a number of new visualizations that we're working on, discussion participation, module progress, learning outcomes, and one that we just completed, which I'm going to go ahead and tease you with here, is goal setting. And so what we allow students to do is they can go ahead and set a personal goal, and then it will automatically go ahead and calculate what they need to get on each assignment in order to track to that goal. And then it will go ahead and sort of visualize where they are in meeting that goal up on this timeline here. And so really this is another view of that assignment planning visualization that I showed you. So this we actually just completed this term. We are doing some initial work with focus groups of students who've used the existing view of the assignment planning and getting some feedback on the design of this tool before we actually implement it into production. So I will open it up for any questions at this point.